talk about school districts, and it's a great concept, but we have to remember that your students are competing with students across the state. When you think about the competition, it's not just who's sitting in the desk next to you or who's sitting in the classroom next to you. These students are competing from across the state for slots at UC schools and Cal State schools. So any disparities that are inadvertently and artificially created now are going to manifest themselves significantly over time. So let's start now. There we go. So we're going to start with the basics to bring us all together onto the same page, and what I call just measuring the digital divide. How is it? What's its impact, etc. So come on. Oh, swipe. So here's the chart. The California Emerging Technology Fund, of which I used to be a board member and helped found, does in California the annual broadband adoption survey, and we've done it every year since about 2008. Because when we were starting up, we kind of figured, well, if our mission is to close the digital divide, we should probably know what the digital divide is. So we've hired several different firms over the years, from the Field Poll to PPIC. Now we use Berkeley IGS to conduct a 16-person scientifically conducted random sample study in California. And then we take that sample and we weight it based upon known demographics. And what you see here is from 2008 through about 2010, the digital divide was closing. Or I shouldn't say the digital divide was closing, broadband adoption was increasing. What I don't believe I have in the next slide that I've included in other presentations is a slide from the Pew Center nationally, where you go back and you see that broadband didn't start being adopted residentially until about 2000 to 2002. So if this chart were to continue down, you'd see, less than 10 years ago, it'd be at 0. So starting in 2010, you'll see it's at 70%. And if you were to draw a straight line from the 70% in 2010 to the 69, you'd basically see a flat line. And the years in between 2010 and 2017, those are all within the margin of error. So we don't know that it was actually 67% in 2014. It could have been 66, it could have been 68, but within the margin of error, basically broadband adoption from a computing device didn't change from 2010 to 2017. However, you do see, obviously, smartphone adoption increased. I will talk in a minute about why smartphones, in my opinion and the opinion of many, are not a sufficient device for educational or economic endeavors. So what we see here is this was the 2019. We skipped 2018 with the survey for a couple of reasons that aren't that important. We went to 2019, and you can see there was a difference. There was a 9% increase in home computing device use between 2017 and 2019. We don't know yet. We were going to do a survey this year, but COVID got in the way, and our pollster says don't do a survey this year. It's just not good. So we don't know whether this was an anomaly or this was a trend. We have some understanding as to why, and if you start piecing together the data, what you'll see is the most likely explanation for this is that educational endeavors across the state have increased broadband adoption amongst K-12 households, which have increased that number overall. We'll see this year what that amounts to, and who knows if COVID has changed that number as well. So we're going to move on here to the next one. So people talk about the digital divide. It's really, we measure it with one number, and we say the number I give is, even though that slide said 28%, I use a round number. I say, it said 22%. I say about 25%. About 25% of Californians don't have access to the internet at home. But that's really two divides. There's an access divide and an adoption divide. And access is literally physical access to the infrastructure, and that's really primarily a rural issue. There's very, very few, if any, urban and suburban areas in California left that don't have broadband available to them. The interesting thing is most of the attention for the past 10 plus years from policymakers has been focused on the rural divide, when in actual fact, the urban divide is much greater. And I can do a whole other talk on that. I'm not going to get into that right now. Adoption is what we just described in the urban areas where you have access, but you've chosen not to adopt. The cables literally run by your house. You've just decided not to sign up. So there's two distinct causes and two distinct solutions. One, in access, we have to build the infrastructure out to the rural areas to connect the people that are out there. The other is we have to figure out how we're going to get urban areas to connect. So I'm going to focus for just a second on urban adoption. What you'll see is the primary correlation between, hopefully you can all see this, the primary correlation between lack of broadband is income. Once you get down, and if you take the Pew data, what you really see, the Pew Center, which is a fantastic site to find research on this, they measure theirs differently than we measure it here in California. So what you see if you combine the two is the breakdown really starts to occur at about $30,000 a year. Household income of $30,000 a year and less, your broadband adoption rate is at about 50%. Up here at 100,000 or more, there's virtually none. And so, we're really interested in the lower income levels. So why is it those lower income levels, and it stands to reason that if lack of income is the biggest correlation, then the lower income levels list the expense of both the service and the device consistently as the reason why they don't have internet. So, so what we're doing is we're building a picture right now of what the digital divide is. About 25% of Californians don't have it, about 20% in urban areas, and about 4.5% in rural areas. Those who don't have it are generally lower income, and they list lack of the expense of the device and the service as the main reason why. So here's the other interesting one that is more relevant to the work that you guys are doing, is when you look at households. So when we do our 1,600 person survey, we don't just say, do you have internet or not? We take a whole bunch of other questions to really try and get a comprehensive picture of who it is that doesn't have the internet, so then we can tailor policy solutions and interventions to help those people. So as you see here, 15% of households with children present throughout California don't have income. Now, in lower income areas, that's higher. So for example, Sac City Unified School District has 70% of their students enrolled in the free and reduced lunch program. So we would expect in Sac City Unified that 15% would probably be much higher, whereas other districts it might be lower. But the blended statewide average is about 15%, and that's about what Pew finds as well nationally. So you now go down below here. So we asked the follow-up question of those with children, with children in the household, or actually I think everybody who doesn't have internet, what do you feel disadvantaged and how? And these are the answers they list. And clearly the number one reason people are listing by far is they can't help their children with homework. So why is this a matter of public policy? And as I have said for a few years now, it's not about cat videos on YouTube. It's what I call the 3 E's, and that's a bit of a stretch, but I like it because people like symmetry. Education, employment, and equal access to services. And that to me is not just government services, but utility services. If you live in PG&E territory, that's a quasi-governmental service. It's about the access to those and the disparities in access between those who have broadband and those who don't have broadband. So those who don't have broadband, and I'm glossing over this, there is ample research on these points right here that I could go deep on, and I'm not going to. You're just gonna have to take my word for it. Individuals who lack broadband access or only have access through smartphones see significant negative impacts. One of the interesting things that Pew found is people whose access is only through a smartphone suffer harms at about the same rate as people who have no access at all. Now, people have argued, oh, no, it's great. And I will challenge anybody who wants to. I will give you and I the same set of information. And you can type a resume on a smartphone and I'll type it on my computer and we'll see who finishes first. You can fill out a college application and write a college essay on your smartphone and I'll do it on my computer and we can see who finishes first. I don't even actually have to get very far. I just have to challenge people and then all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, I guess you're right. So students in school face hardships such as completing assignments. My third grader, I have a third grader and she's going into 4th grade at Sac City Unified, has to use a computer every night to complete her assignments. Now, there are workarounds, but those workarounds often impose hardships and barriers, and that's what we're talking about. We're talking about two similar students. We don't want to disenfranchise low-income students because of a lack of technology. My child has an advantage because we have gigabit service at home and laptops available for her to use. We need to figure out how the other children are going to compete with my child and other similarly situated children around the state. They can use the web to search information. My third grader, Her big assignment at the end of this year was a habitat report. She had to do a bibliography. She had to find sources. We had to go on the internet to find those sources. Filling out online applications. As I said, you try filling out the application to go to UC or CSU on your phone, you're going to be really challenged. And right now, under COVID, libraries are not an option. You can't go to the facilities that normally would be workarounds. Contacting employers for summer jobs or for internships is a hardship. Contacting colleges is a challenge. Any of those things that you and I might take for granted, take away your computer for a week and try and accomplish those things, and you'll find out how quickly, how hard it is for students without connectivity to survive. So before we go on to some of the solutions, one other thing that I've been pushing is kind of unifying the objective. You know, over the years, we've had lots of different definitions, lots of policymakers. What should we focus on? I have really tried in my research, my publications, my speeches, and my communications to policymakers to say, here's what we need to focus on, here's the comprehensive definition, and here's why it makes sense. It's what I call meaningful internet access, because internet access alone doesn't cut the mustard. Internet access alone is useless. My first boss, when I started working in the legislature in 1998, was a wonderful man, and he was in his late 60s. And at that time, businesses did have broadband, and he had a computer on his desk, and he had great broadband, and he had no idea how to use that computer. So in his case, broadband access was useless. Broadband access addresses what I say is not just the access itself, it's a dynamic concept that changes over time, and it addresses the functionality, which is really what's important. The ability of any one of us to use the computer, not just have the cable coming into the house. So it combines internet service, computing equipment, and digital literacy skills. And if you take away any one of those three things, you don't have meaningful internet access. As I said, my old boss had a computing device provided him by the state of California, T1 connection, which was the fastest they had at the time, and didn't know how to use it. Now he had staff, but still. So here's a little more detail. So in order for any consumer to have meaningful internet access, they have to have a reliable broadband internet connection that meets the government's minimum definition for broadband. We can quibble over that, and I do, as to whether the government's minimum definition is fast enough. But at the same time, I didn't want to just impose my beliefs. That seemed like a good standard to go by. You need a computing device capable, and again, I am very careful here. You'll notice I didn't say a laptop, I didn't say a desktop, because it's the functionality. It needs to provide the sufficient functionality and computing power to support what I call prevalent consumer applications at any point in time. So for right now, educationally, that would mean, can you Zoom with your teacher? If you don't have a camera, you probably can't Zoom with your teacher. That's a problem for a student right now under COVID. You know, are you going to have hardships if you're a 9th, 10th, 11th grade English student or history student and you have to type an end of year essay that's X number of words? Can you do that? Does your device allow you to do that in the same way that I could do it on my device? And then finally, the digital literacy skills. And that goes to, can you send an email? Can you fill out a resume? Can you apply for jobs? Can you apply for colleges? We're not asking people to be programmers. We're just asking them to have, or saying they should have, these sorts of digital literacy skills that are necessary to engage in life functions. So here's what we're looking at. COVID-19 impact expected. I talked to experts on this, including Andrea, who was very helpful on this before I had a paper published recently on this topic. And we looked at expected educational outcomes from COVID on education without interventions. So what I did is I tried to figure out what are the things that are going to impact. So here's a list of the determinants of academic achievement in a distance learning environment. Now, obviously, there's many more than these things that go into this, but here's the three that I want to focus on. It's the technological, what I call sufficiency, not proficiency. Go in and out a little bit, so I'm hopeful my video is still streaming fine. So the teacher, the school district end is often forgotten. We focus on the students, but in rural areas, the teacher may not have sufficient access at home either. In many areas, the teacher might not have the right equipment at home or the right digital literacy skills. I mean, not to pick on them. I love my daughter. I have a second daughter, and she was in kindergarten this year. My kindergarten teacher to, let's see, closing some applications to improve low system resource. Hold on a second. Okay, let's see if this does it. You know, so she may not have the skills necessary. So training to provide skills on the teacher end is something that's important, because two teachers teaching the same grade level, the same material, if one has the ability to use a computer to distribute materials and the other doesn't, the student's going to suffer. Second is the technological sufficiency of the content receiver. That's the student or the household. And are they able to receive it? Putting it in football terms, I can have the greatest quarterback in the world, and if he throws the ball 50 yards downfield and there's no receiver nearby, it doesn't matter how well he throws that football. The flip side is, you know, if I am the greatest receiver in the world, I can be Jerry Rice, best receiver all time, and if the quarterback can't throw the football to me, then it doesn't matter how great a receiver I am. So you have to have both sides of the handshake to make it really work, and if you take away any one of these, you're putting the student in a disadvantage. And the third essential element is the parent household caregiver support. It takes many shapes and many forms. It could be a grandparent, it could be a babysitter, it could be the parent themselves, and sometimes it could be an older sibling, which has a whole host of problems as well. But for particularly for K5 or 6 students, the ability of the parent to help them along with engaging, loading the Zoom, finding the materials. My daughter did a great job on her report, but she wouldn't have been able to navigate the internet without my help. That's an essential element as well. So you take away any of these elements, you're injecting more variables into the educational system, and that's going to skew outcomes in a way that might not have. And so I'll conclude this slide by just simply saying this. You could have a student who in normal circumstances was straight A, but their home life is their parents were immigrants, English is a second language, don't have the educational culture of America. They might be super smart, but they just weren't raised in our educational system, and they're not able to provide the support at home, lower income perhaps, and they don't have the technology. That child was thriving in school because the teacher was right there and the parents were telling them, you need to get your education. You take them home, and instead of 95% of the instruction being done in school and supplemented by the parents, now the instruction is taking place at home, and you've removed the technology and you remove the assistance, and that child's going to struggle. So here's what we've looked at. So this looks like a complicated chart, but it really isn't. It really isn't that hard. And if I had to summarize this chart in like one sentence, what I'd say is this. For most students, it's not a matter of if they're going to fall behind, it's just when and how far. That's really it. Under distance learning, without technology, it's not a matter of if you fall behind, it's when and how far. Technology will help keep you from falling behind. So on the, I'm pointing, like you guys can see what I'm pointing at. On the left side of the screen, there's a column at the head that says education content producer. And that's the school district, the teacher, etc. And I made that binary. They either have high capacity or low capacity to provide technology support in education. Then you have two columns on with the headers across the top, and these are non-digital educational household capacity. Is it high? Is it like my household where my wife and I are both educated? We have the ability to assist in education, or is the non-digital educational capabilities of the household low? Were the educational achievement of the parents significantly lower than they're aspiring to for their children? There are language barriers, etc. And then under that, you look at the access to digital technology. And on each side, regardless of whether you're a high achiever or a low achiever, if you don't have access to technology, you're significantly falling below grade level. And then if you have limited access, and limited access can encompass a number of different things. It could be 2 or 3 students in one device. It could be an insufficient device, as I said. It could be no broadband. There's all sorts of ways you have limited access to technology, but some, and it depends upon the limitations to the access as to whether you are falling behind or not falling behind. And again, the educational level of the parents can help overcome that, but if the educational level of the parents isn't sufficient and the technological access is limited, you're again likely falling behind. So there's as you look at this chart, and I can send these slides to you guys if you want to make them available afterwards. There's very, very few circumstances here where somebody is at or above grade level. There's a couple where you're possibly performing at grade level, depending. And I don't want to go into every permutation. You generally get the idea here. Technology and the access to technology on the content producer and the family side will help overcome some of the other barriers. So policy recommendations, and I believe I'm getting to the very, very end here, and then hopefully I have time for questions. I forgot to start the clock, so hopefully I'm good to go. So here's what I say. Interventions must be taken as soon as and extensively as possible. Unfortunately, many school districts around the country, not just here in California, were operating under some false hope that things were gonna return to normal in September and we're all good to go, and they didn't spend as much time planning as they should. Some did, some didn't. What we know from prior research is that once there's a disparity, it's usually cemented, and it takes years to overcome that disparity. There's always a summer slide. Students fall behind over the course of summer. It's somewhere in the 25%, it's like 20% of reading skills erode over the summer if you don't practice, and like 27% of math skills, which makes sense. I mean, think about any of our activities. I used to be a really good golfer. If I put the clubs down for 6 months, my golf game's not gonna be as good. Brian, I think you said you're a cyclist. I'm a cyclist also. I used to be a runner. I could run a really fast marathon, and if I stop training 6 months from now, my marathon's not gonna be as good. So now we've got a protracted summer slide, because if you saw, not to pimp my wife out on this, but if you saw my wife's really excellent report on KCRA the other night, the engagement level of students in the spring semester on distance learning was really not where it should be. In Sac City Unified, only 60% of students were engaged at a 60% level. So your summer slide is now, instead of 2.5 months, it could be 5 months, could be 6 months. So these are the things that need to be done immediately by school districts and the state. It shouldn't just be school districts. It needs to be strategic, not ad hoc. I understand the ad hoc system that we use to get from the close of school to the end of the year. No one was prepared for it. I'm not knocking anybody for their efforts. It was Herculean and heroic in many circumstances to do what we did. But we need to start systemically improving things. It can't be district by district where one district's great and the other district isn't, because that artificially dooms the students of one district to worse outcomes than the other district. We need to focus on household technology. Make sure that the households have broadband access. Sac City Unified has done a good job in some regards. They just announced this great partnership with Comcast to provide 6 months free internet. And nobody talked to me about this first. I'm like, well, wait a minute. September, October, November, December, January, February. So what do they do for March, April, May, and half of June? Like, no internet? And it's like, everybody's like, oh yeah. I'm like, that didn't occur to anybody. They need to have consistent, reliable internet to do Zooms for the entire school year. The districts and the state need to focus on the content production and delivery and make sure that a 4th grader in a district in Fresno and a 4th grader in a district in San Diego and a 4th grader in Sacramento all have, their teachers all have the same ability to deliver content. And they're not hamstringing a student in Fresno because their teacher is technologically incapable of providing that. You need to work to overcome the non-technology household non-technology educational capabilities, because now you've put the parents and the household responsible for so much of the education. You need to provide some of these folks a higher level of assistance. Summer educational interventions, that one's going by the wayside. And then gradually over time, we need to change our instructional material design and delivery so that we're not just, scanning in PDFs and emailing PDFs, that there's more meaningful engagement with technology. And with that, I am going to say thank you, and I'm going to stop screen sharing. Maybe, come on. And I'm going to go back to there, and I'm going to say, any questions?
Yeah, that was really a lot of good information, Lloyd. Really appreciate that. That was a lot of information to take in, and I know you probably went through that faster than normal. I'm still on page 3 of your slide mentally.
Sorry.
No, I didn't mean that.
I know you have time constraints, and I wanted to get the information out.
Yes, no, and I truly appreciate that, and appreciate you being here today.
Also, Brian, as I've said in speeches many times, the reason I'm not on Twitter is because I'm a politician. I can't say hello in 140 characters. So.
All right. And anyone here have any questions for Lloyd at this point?
I've stunned them into silence.
No, I don't have a question. I just want to thank you so very much. And as a school board member, it made me very much aware of the importance of what we're going through right now. and trying to make this as easy on families, the teachers, and our school district is working very hard on that, but there's still going to be all those little hills and valleys, and we've just got to come together and make it as right as we possibly can. So thank you very much. I am going to, this is being recorded, so I'm going to send it to our superintendent and deputy superintendent. Thank you.
Okay, my pleasure. Anything else I can do to help? Andrea's got my full paper, which says in writing some of what I said, and it's available on my Facebook page. And anything else I can do to help, you know, just let me know. And I appreciate your efforts on trying. It's the districts that try and fail that are going to succeed, because trying is going to put you ahead of those districts who are deluding themselves and not trying.
Right, exactly. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Lloyd. I appreciate you being here today.
Yes, thank you very much for your time today, Lloyd. Really appreciate it, and look forward to maybe hearing some more from you in the future too. So
Great.
thank you. Okay, any other questions before we wrap up here? And if the board members can stay on so we can talk through what I mentioned earlier for Steve, I'd appreciate that. And for those who are going to drop off, then we will see you next Thursday at noon. All right, and have a great week. All right.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.
Bye-bye, everybody.
All right. Okay. So it looks like we've got myself, Clark, Kimberly, Chris, Claire, Daryl, Howie, and Richard. So why don't we go ahead and talk a moment. So I was contacted, of course, the night that Steve had passed, and then I had to kind of collect my own thoughts and then send some information out to everyone Saturday morning. And then since then, I've been approached by Christine specifically, who had mentioned that, you know, I didn't know any of Steve's, what was going on for him. So I didn't realize it was a big shift for him and Tracy and his their family financially, from what he was doing to what he's doing now, or what he was doing before he passed. So making that huge career change or job change was an impact for them. And then in a case like his, where unexpectedly passed away, she's, you know, obviously she's got a net on her mind. And so anything that others can do to help ease some of that pain for her, to help contribute in some way, shape, or form to make things a little easier for her through this transition, I think would be great. So I was asked, and I want to put to all of you, is a contribution of $1,000 towards Steve's funeral services. And specifically, the category I was asked was to hold, they want to hold a, I never really liked the word reception for a funeral. It just doesn't sound right. I think it's actually called a repost or something. Anyway, so and after service gathering to help pay for some food and beverage for those that can attend the gathering. So I was asked for $1,000, and I appreciate what Richard mentioned earlier, that he's donated as well, and then has the ability to start collecting donations from people that he's able to reach out to. Hopefully some of us from the club will be able to do that personally. But so what I want to put out to you guys is any discussion. Oh, one more thing. I did talk with Joanne a little bit through voicemail, really, because there was a concern about whether or not we can do something like this. And the way I understand it anyway is, it's one thing to say, oh, we're going to help, help to pay a debt for someone, if you will. But it's another to say we're going to help with their final services, right? Someone that's passed. It's a little different philosophy than just giving money from Rotary to a Rotary member. And I understand those concerns. So it sounds like we're okay to do this. And I know, Claire, you probably have a lot of good background on this as well. But what discussion is there regarding what we do and how we do it? And I'll open the floor up maybe to Claire first. Oh, Claire, you're on mute. There you go.
So much fun. Obviously, I should be one of those slow learners. Anyway, this morning we had an ambassador meeting too, and this all came up. But according to what we heard this morning, and this was at 9 o'clock, they still have no place that they can do this. They have no, no one is, because they can't do it inside churches of any kind. There's no meeting place. They're looking for an outdoor place, but their parks aren't allowing it in most of the cases. So, I think they're up in the air. Has anybody heard anything different since that? But that was like 9 o'clock this morning, but.
No.
I haven't heard anything further. Let me double check my schedule because I think they put tentatively the 22nd. But again, they're trying to find a location, and that's hard to do with the big group right now. So it has to be a private place willing to do it, which is hard to come by right now. But they're hoping, and Pastor Eric Long with the salt mine, he was actually supposed to go over to a location that Tracy had liked and ask, but I haven't heard back since.
Okay. So maybe what we do, given that, and yes, I heard August 22nd was the date they had planned for the services. But if we're contributing something to go towards food and beverage for a gathering, then maybe what we do is we look to approve a dollar amount, but let them know that until they're able to do it, we release the funds once they've got that date and time and place set. Does that sound like a way to go about this?
Does it only have to go for food and beverage? What if
it doesn't have to.
Or service, if it's going to be a private service to help them out that way?
Okay.
They have a fund set up, or they were working on it when I talked to them last Saturday. I think they're going through the 4th of July fund so that they don't have to use a GoFundMe.
Right.
That's correct. That's what Holly told me, to make the check out to the 4th of July Foundation.
Yep. And so they're hoping to garner about $10,000 is what they think services will cost.
Okay.
Well, when they asked you, Brian, when they talked to you, did they specifically say for food and beverage? I mean, they
Yes.
must have a committee that's picking out who wants to pay for this and what has to be paid for. It sounds like to me.
Yes, and it was specific to food and beverage. So, but if we decide to do something, I'm sure that if we said, okay, we'll contribute to the 4th of July fund or directly to the family. I don't see any reason that it would be an issue for them, right?
Yeah.
I would think first and foremost, they're trying to cover at least the 10 grand, what it sounds like for the initial services. And it sounds like they want to do something fairly nice as a gathering for people to commemorate his life after the fact.
I wouldn't have any objection to just making the contribution to the 4th of July Foundation and let them deal with it from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I
I
think
would
just
agree to that.
yeah, just put it on the memo line for the Archer service or something along those lines.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay.
I
All
was having a
right.
little problem before with video and audio. So is the problem indoor as well as outdoor? Or is it just indoor that we're talking about? Is it outdoor service?
Outdoor as well. The cemeteries locally are only allowing 10 people, and I only allow about 26 at my location outside. And indoors is completely off limits.
Right, right.
All right.
Hard for people.
Okay.
So I'd make a motion that we donate $1,000 to the 4th of July Foundation for Steve Archer's services as.
Okay. All right. Do I have a second?
I second that.
Okay. All right. And then all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Any opposed? Any abstention? No. Okay. All right. So we'll go unanimous. So $1,000 to the 4th of July Fund, referencing Steve Archer Services, and then I'll go ahead and move forward on that because we've got enough votes here. And I know Christine was in favor of it, but she couldn't attend due to another call she had. So then I'll go ahead and get that processed. And I want to say thanks to all of you for sticking around and helping get through this. And I know, I don't know Tracy, but I'm sure she'll very much appreciate anything we or anyone else can do to help her out. Okay. All right. Any other comments? Oh, Howie, looks like you're trying to say something. You're on mute. Howie. You're on mute.
How's that? Can you hear me?
There you go.
Yeah,
Yes.
much better.
Hey.
I tried reading your lips, but I couldn't get anywhere.
Two questions. One, where the hell are you working now?
Me personally,
Yeah.
in an undisclosed location.
Okay.
No. I say that because I was fortunate enough to have a couple of trips while we were going through a lot of this stuff. I work from my home here in West Roseville, and periodically, if I go into an office, it'll be the Lincoln Boulevard, Wells Fargo, or over in Loomis. I've got clients over there as well.
Okay.
Okay.
More importantly, Steve was really a good guy. So those of us that want to contribute additionally to the Rotary donation, where and how and what direction?
Yes, Richard.
Let me jump into that. I spoke with Holly Andrietta, and so what she's suggesting is to send the check to her house, and the reference would be to the made out to the Lincoln 4th of July Foundation memo for Archer our service or whatever, something along those lines, just so that they can keep it clean with no problem.
Okay. What's any address?
Yeah, I'll put this out, but it's 2644 Avocet Way, Avocet Way, Lincoln.
Okay. Well, I'm going to make.
That's Holly's at home.
Okay. I'm going to make a contribution. So that's all I have to say. I enjoyed attending the meeting. Thanks. It's nice to see everybody.
Yeah, good to see you
Good
too,
to see
Howie.
you too.
Thanks for joining us today, and thanks for sticking around to be part of this. Okay, then why don't we go ahead and close out, and then I will see you all next Thursday, if not sooner. All right.
Brian, do you have a
Thank you all for your
secretary
help.
yet?
Pardon me?
Do you have a secretary yet?
No. That's the one position I still don't have. Chris did say she'd help out with the programs, and she's been handling that, which I really appreciate. But no, still looking for a secretary if you're up to it.
You didn't even get a smile out of her on that one.
I know, I
Not happening.
know. I have no charm whatsoever. It doesn't work. All right. Well, thank you all very much for being here and for your support. And we'll talk soon. All right.
Bye.
All right.
Take care. Thanks again, Clark, for running the meeting.
Bye-bye.
Bye.